Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Conservative Corner. I'm Elliot Margolis, and I'm here with my guest today, Hannah Bowen, who is running for state representative and is currently a Beverly City Councilor. Mm-hmm. Welcome, Hannah.
Hi, thanks, Elliot. Happy to be here today.
Tell me, why are you running for state rep?
Yeah, so I really see a huge opportunity for Beverly and Precinct 1 in Wenham to have a strong voice at the State House. These next few years look very uncertain as far as the budget. With policies sort of up in the air at all levels, we really need somebody who's going to be ready on day one to bring our voice into that conversation in an admittedly complex place. And I'm ready for that. I'm excited about doing that this year. We have a special election. Currently, there's a vacancy. So really, I think it's about being ready to take on the role right away.
Okay, so when is the special election?
Yes, I will be in the Democratic primary on April 15th, tax day / election day. And then there is a general election on May 13th as well.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that there's all kinds of budgetary issues and things like that.
Yeah. It
seems to me that the state is very irresponsible with our money. It's like, well, we can do this, we can do that. It's only, if we add a little more taxes, it's only a cup of coffee a week. How many cups of coffee can people stand?
Yeah, and the price of cups of coffee is going up too, right?
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I think we're all feeling it. The affordability crunch is very real. So for me, housing as a percentage of my income has gotten a little out of control. All of those daily expenses we're all feeling. Government's feeling it too, though, because all the costs of people doing the work, the basic public services that we need salaries that keep pace with inflation. So it's, we have to think about creative ways to collect those revenues. And then I think, to your point, spend our money really effectively and communicate how we're spending it. So one of the things the state legislature is struggling with right now is this issue around transparency and how much people know about what's going on, how easily accessible the information is. So even some of the great programs that are well run and are great uses of our collective funds aren't as well known, or the information isn't as easily accessible. So for me, it's both how we actually create that budget, how we prioritize within our budget, how we're creative about revenues matching to our needs, and then how we communicate about what we're doing. Because having the best policy in place, but nobody knows how it got there, who fed into it, whose needs were balanced, how those priorities got set, isn't going to feel like an effective policy that represents our needs. So it's both how we run the programs, but also how we talk about them. And I want to be a state rep that is there to explain the process every step of the way, seek input, and participate in a legislature that we know is structured a certain way. It's not going to change. I'm not looking to change it overnight, but I am looking to approach it from that open way that I have approached the city council as well.
Okay, now I've talked to a number of people, and you talk about spending money. You and I have a disagreement on this one, okay? I call them illegals, you call them undocumented. The bottom line is we have people in this country that didn't come in here the way they were supposed to, and we're spending millions of our tax dollars on these people. Now, is that an effective use of our money?
So, I mean, the whole issue of immigration, and I'm glad you noted we have a disagreement about terms, because I really think it's important that we focus on more humanizing language and step away a little bit from that polarization that, unfortunately, a lot of our public conversations have gotten caught up in. So focusing on, yes, people that we as a state, that we as a country are trying to support in some way as they try and contribute to our economy. But I think, in Massachusetts, the emergency shelter crisis that we're facing right now is much bigger than new arrivals. That certainly having additional new arrivals in the state has added some strain to the system, but the system was already strained. So families falling into homelessness because they're not able to make 1 month's rent and then fall into an eviction situation, are couch surfing, are in their car, are looking for that transition back into stable housing. We have not been able to keep pace with that need as a state overall. So I think addressing the housing crisis, which has been a big focus of my work in the city, but also of our state legislature, that's helping relieve some of the pressure. Because really, I think we're in this situation of you end up having to spend sort of emergency money to tackle in a slightly more expensive way, like, using hotels and motels to house families. Again, Massachusetts families, for the most part, you end up having to sort of spend more because you don't have the long-term investment in stable housing and supportive programs that we need. So I look at this moment as, yes, we still need to be dealing with the emergency at the moment, and we need to really be focused on that long term so that we don't end up here again with families looking for shelter. And here in Beverly, we're lucky to also have partners who are working on all steps in that housing crisis that we're in. So helping individuals and families who have been unhoused get into stable housing, helping people stay in affordable housing, Harbor Light Partners building new buildings in Beverly that have mixed income residents, even down the shelter that LifeBridge runs in Beverly that is, more of that sort of emergency shelter, has actually had to switch to accommodate a changing population of people experiencing homelessness. So that facility is now for women who are on their own. Many have children, but they are on their own in the shelter system. And that facility has been full since it switched over to accommodate women. So the needs are varied, they are wide. Right here in Beverly, we have great community organizations helping provide community meals every night of the week. And they're seeing, 100 people come in the door who are food insecure. So when I think about the state needing to invest money in taking care of our neighbors, I'm willing to make those investments. I agree with you. We have to be thoughtful about how we do it and really think about that long term. It costs less to help someone transition into stable housing, employment, food security, and stay there than it does to sort of treat the emergency situation once someone falls out of stable housing.
Right. See, my feeling is that we need to help U.S. citizens more than somebody who just came in. We have an obligation to our citizens. We don't have an obligation to the entire world.
Yeah, we're obviously living in an interconnected world, but federal policy on immigration, I think we both agree, needs attention, and probably are both calling our congressional representatives.
Well, let's face it, Congress
tackle
hasn't done their job. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican.
Yeah,
neither one has done their job.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the other thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about is I'm tired of people, like say the Democratic leadership in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. The impression is they tell you how to vote, and if you don't vote that way, you're not going to get a committee assignment, or you're not independent.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. That's not democracy.
Yeah.
That's dictatorship.
So there is a lot of work being done right now on how to make Massachusetts more open and a more sort of vibrant democracy, because I think it's easy to get complacent at times. So, certainly the perception is there that, especially within the state legislature, there isn't as much room for individual legislators to kind of stake their own path. That's been some of the feedback I've gotten, even when I've been out talking to people on the doors, getting really great feedback, and really the only negative piece I've heard is, won't you find it frustrating as someone who likes to get things done that it can be a slow-moving place with that hierarchy and everything? And I mean, the way I think about
Naturally, I forgot to shut my
Oh,
phone
no worries.
off. I apologize for that. So, you know, usually I shut my phone off right away.
Now I'm hoping that I shut mine off because it's too far to reach and it will just be ringing in the background.
I mean, I apologize for that.
No, you're good. But yeah, I mean, I think of it as every institution has its institutional sort of memory and its norms, and I've never been sort of someone to come in and say, I'm going to just like flip over the tables and do everything differently. But I am an independent thinker. I think on the council, people have seen how I try and approach a problem with my mediator hat on, with my policy analyst hat on, with my past advocacy hat on, and sort of look at the whole issue. What is everyone saying about this? What are the different needs that need to be balanced? Where do I land on this personally, but also where do I land on this as a representative of my community? And then how do I communicate that as transparently as I can, and also be transparent about where the constraints are? So a good example in the recent teacher strike, you know, the city council did not have a formal role in the negotiations.
Right.
And we, you know, should not have directly intervened in the negotiations. We have elected officials and the union at the table doing that. And we have informal roles to play. We have sort of community leadership roles to play. And in the end, I found a way to put the topic on the council agenda in a way that was not, you know, directly interfering with the negotiations, but essentially saying, we're ready to do our step in this process when it gets to us. We're hearing from constituents how disruptive this strike is. We're hearing from constituents how important fully funding our schools and paying our teachers what they need to live here is. And we know as counselors what the budget constraints are. We need all those things to be part of the conversation, and we need everybody to be back at the table and to get a settled contract to us if more funding is needed. We'll be there to weigh that balance. That's our step in the process. So that's a case where, sure, you know, the formal structure, we did not have a seat at that table. And I think our discussion as a council in a packed room, letting some of the emotion of where we were all at in this really difficult situation with two competing interests, but a shared interest in getting kids back in school and having the best school system we can have, like having that space to have that conversation really helped move back to negotiations. And I think of the State House in that way as well, that there will be some things I might want to be able to do and can't for some formal reason. There are other ways to collaborate with people. There are other ways to bring in a broader coalition. I have experience doing that work, so I'm not deterred by a hierarchical system, a complicated system. You know, I think I can navigate in that space without making enemies, but also while getting things done for Beverly and Wenham. That, you know, we're in a negotiation with every other city and town in the Commonwealth.
Well, you know, there was a statistic that I heard the other day about education. The United States spends more money per pupil than any other country in the world, and we're 40th in quality of education.
Yeah.
There's no causal link between what you spend and the quality, but I got to move on.
And it's the same in healthcare, right?
Yeah.
We have similar statistics where we spend more and get less.
One thing that really gets me cranky, okay? You go to Boston from Beverly. You pay the toll on the Tobin Bridge. You go to Boston from the South Shore. There's no toll. So I've asked Jerry Paracella and I've asked Joan Lovely. And I got two different answers. And both of them were lies. Okay.
I'm sure they were giving you the best information they had, but that sounds like, I mean, it's one of those things that I feel like a lot of Massachusetts infrastructure spending and history is sort of lost in the past years of negotiations and that sort of behind the scenes, how decisions get made. The truth is out there somewhere. But at this point, when I think about how we're funding roads and bridges, public transportation especially, you have this balance of trying to figure out what funding model is going to best serve everyone. So you can have user fees, like just the people who go over the bridge help pay for the bridge. There's
Right,
talk
but-
of things like
but-
congestion pricing. People who drive pay a little bit more, which encourages people to use public transportation. You know, thinking about public transportation, when I take the train into Boston, you know, that ticket price has gone up and up and up, and you know,
Yep.
you're almost $20 round trip into Boston. And how much do we want that full cost burden to be on the specific people who are using that specific piece of infrastructure? And how much do we want to spread that among all of us who benefit from that being there? So, right, if I take the train, I am not sitting in traffic in front of you if you're driving. So we both benefit. So I think when we think about funding infrastructure, it's usually some mix of, you know, if it's a particular, like the reason toll roads exist is because some people use them and some people don't, and
Right,
it's an
but
additional revenue
we're
source.
paying for using the bridge
Yep.
or the, you know, the big dig. They're not.
Yeah, and again, some of that is sort of lost to history, how we got here, but we're going to have a lot more infrastructure projects. When you think about, you know, there's going to be a push for funding for the Cape bridges. If federal funding is not where we thought it was going to be, that will fall on the state. Beverly is going to be at that table, right? Beverly and Wenham are going to have a voice.
Okay, but
how much do we as a whole state depend on tourism on the Cape and being able to get off and on? We're going to have to be able to have that conversation and think about which things need to be shared and which things are regional, which things are community by community. So
you know that it's less expensive to maintain a property than it is to rebuild it.
yeah.
So the city of Beverly did not maintain the high school, and so we had to build a new one. The city, nobody's maintaining the bridges.
Right.
You could drive down 128 or 95, as you want to call it now, and you see the condition of the bridges, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
Is there a priority going? Is it going to be your priority to make sure that we stop maintaining property instead of having to rebuild the bridge that's going to take 7 years?
Yeah.
See, that's unacceptable, and that's incompetence from the politicians as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so I agree that like having a maintenance plan, having a capital improvement plan up front, it sort of gets to what I was saying about, you know, our housing crisis. Like that was years in the making, and having better systems in place up front saves you money in the long run. We have to be able to make that case though as well, because, you know, I've seen on the council when capital projects come to us, when they feel like they're out of nowhere, it's really hard to get behind them. When they've been part of a 10-year planning process, by the time it gets to cutting the check, everybody is on board. And it's the same with thinking about maintenance. So I think about, you know, yes, our major state assets right now, the two bridges and that project is going to take a lot longer than any of us would like. And, you know, where was the maintenance plan along the way and the replacement plan in time so that we could prepare for it. But I think about things like our city infrastructure as well. Being a city councilor, one of the things I've really pushed for is getting a stronger capital planning process. The council just got our most recent capital improvement plan from the mayor's team. It looks very similar to the last several years that I've seen, and you know, not having that sort of, okay, here's when we're going to need to replace all the school roofs because they're reaching a certain age and they need to be redone, and here's our plan for paying for that. And we're saving some of the money up front, we're borrowing some of the money, whatever it's going to take, but here's our game plan. The capital improvement plan does some of that, but I don't think it's as integrated as it could be. So that's one of the things I've really pushed for. We're now getting quarterly updates. Council colleagues have helped with that push. So, you know, we're getting updates on capital projects, what's happening with the youth center, what's happening with City Hall renovations, what's happening with the library renovation, Central Fire Station. You know, we have a lot of buildings that are aging, and as we go into each of these projects, it's thinking about what will maintenance look like after a renovation. What can we put in place so that they're more sustainable buildings that require less maintenance or last longer? How can we be good stewards of that funding? And so I would think about state funding and state controlled infrastructure, Mass DOT and others, in the same way of like, what is the long-term plan? How often are we checking in on it? How is maintenance being adequately funded? It's one of the challenges with the MBTA right now, and having new leadership there look at what is our maintenance plan, our capital improvement plan, long-term investments, I think is important.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's so many problems, but now do we have a homeless problem in Beverly?
So there are unhoused people all over Massachusetts, including in Beverly. We're lucky that our community impact unit of the police department does a really good job with outreach, and that we have, for a while, we had a social services navigator out of the health department also doing outreach. And we have really great community partners, so LifeBridge being one, Beverly Bootstraps, all of the community groups, Ellis Square Friends and others that do those meals. So there are a lot of people that may not be as visible, but are housing insecure or currently unhoused. And it is a real issue. It's a real issue in weather like this. Where are people finding a safe place to stay? I think Salem is probably a little more visible in terms of community conversations about how to support people who are in and out of stable housing. In Beverly, it's a little bit more kind of behind the scenes. People are doing that work, and it's not as much of a public conversation. But yeah, it's a problem here, like it's a problem everywhere. And we're also just facing, I think, a lot of people struggling to stay housed where and how they want to be housed. So it may not be that they're at risk of homelessness, but it may be that they are at risk of having to move out of the city to someplace where they can find a lower cost apartment, or where they may be able to buy. People may be in living situations that aren't their ideal, but are what is available. For me, on my first term on the council, really pushing for the accessory dwelling unit ordinance was a big priority of mine coming onto the council, and was happy to see the council take that up, work with the mayor's team and the planning department to really tailor it to Beverly, because that's the kind of policy that helps people take the housing stock we have now, the neighborhood feel that we have now, and adjust it for the types of living situations that we need. So maybe what was a large family home that now has just a couple of people in it, but a little extra space, and what was, somebody starting out their career with the police department or the fire department, looking to move out on their own. We can, through an accessory dwelling unit, have a rental and an owner on the same property. It doesn't increase density that much from a neighborhood feel perspective, but does give people the types of housing. And typically those are more naturally affordable housing options that people are looking for in the city. So that's the sort of policy that I think, it's connected to the whole, every piece of the housing crisis, but it's really tailored to Beverly. And that then passed at the state level. So other communities are now having to scramble and say, oh, now homeowners can by right add an accessory dwelling unit, and we never had the conversation as a community about how to do that best. In Beverly, we were ahead of that curve. We already put in place a policy that fits Beverly well, and so, I think that's the sort of thing where, that city control and state level policy, you have to understand where they play together, and where the different levers are. But on something like housing or transportation, it really has to be both of those levels of government working hand in hand. So I think for me, having the experience working at the city level in my past work, working in national and international policy even, and the connections at the state level, I can see the opportunities for Beverly over the next few years, see the opportunities for Wenham, working in partnership with the other representatives who also cover Wenham. And, you know, it's going to be, as we said, a challenging budget time. So finding those opportunities and still being able to pull all those levers is going to be really important.
The state allows cities and towns to do tax classification, and it's up to 175% in Beverly. Okay, that to me is counterproductive to business. It means that overhead for the stores is more money. Overhead for the stores that is more money means product is more money. So the state is doing a great job in killing business in Massachusetts. Very quickly, because I want you to be able to.
Sure.
Can you explain your feelings on tax classification?
Yeah, so in Beverly, so our property tax base gets divided up among residential property, industrial and commercial property, open space that doesn't really play into the calculations. But yeah, so every year when we set the spending level of the city, a certain amount of that is going to come from property taxes. And so if we're maxing out the 2.5% increase that we can make every year under state law, then that additional set of everything we were collecting last year plus 2.5% has to come from somewhere, mostly property taxes, and then we divide up how much of the overall number.
But the businesses are paying 175%.
So they are paying a higher rate per per valuation. And so what the challenge has been over the last few years is that residential properties have increased in value astronomically. We've all seen that. As someone who was trying to buy into the market, that was horrifying. It still is. There's lots of things, again, we're doing on that. But commercial and industrial property values have not increased. So in reality, homeowners have been paying more in nominal dollar terms every year and feeling that more and seeing increases that personally might be more than 2.5% because it's, even if the tax rate, the number of dollars per value that you're paying goes down, if the value is way, way up, your tax bill still increases. Commercial and industrial properties, many of them had flat or even decreased tax bills in dollar terms.
Right, that's because the property values have gone down because they're not doing the business that they used to.
Well, because it's a tough economic climate,
That's a net reflection of the tax base.
Yeah, so that shift really just has allowed us to sort of share out taxes at about the same balance that we've been aiming for over time. So it's kind of more of a technical fix for how we distribute those costs. But I think then you have to think about what are we doing on the economic development side to support businesses through that.
All right. Unfortunately, we are out of time.
All right, it goes fast.
You have good answers and you've got long answers, and so the questions, it is what it is. But good luck.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great to talk to you.
You know, it'll be nice to see a new state representative in the city of Beverly.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me on.
I hope you enjoyed the show. And as you know, we had Todd Rotundo a couple of weeks ago, and we will have Medley Long on as soon as he can. Thank you for watching.